I need to tell someone what I did, and you're going to think I deserved everything that happened to me. Maybe I did. But there's something about ultimatums in relationships that nobody really talks about. The fact that sometimes when you give one, you're not actually bluffing, and sometimes the other person calls it anyway. And then you're just standing there in the wreckage wondering how you became the villain in your own story. Everyone thinks Daniel is the hero here. The guy who finally stood up for himself and walked away from a demanding, high-maintenance girlfriend who didn't appreciate what she had. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's exactly what happened. But what nobody knows, what I've never told anyone, not my best friend, not my therapist, not even my mom who keeps asking why I'm not dating yet, is that I said those words specifically because I didn't think he'd actually leave. I thought I was finally taking control. I thought I was done being the cool girl who never asked for anything. I thought I knew exactly what I was doing. I was wrong about everything. If I don't tell this story the right way, you'll never understand why I'm still checking his Instagram at 2 in the morning, 9 months later. You'll think I'm just another bitter ex who can't move on. But once you know what I know, once you understand what actually happened in the 6 months before I said those words, you'll see why this isn't just about a breakup. It's about the version of myself I thought I'd finally become, and how spectacularly I failed at being her. I'm going to tell you everything, including the part where I deliberately created the exact situation I claim to hate. The part that makes me look worst. I'm saving that for later because you need to understand who I was before Daniel first to see how far I fell. 3 years ago, I was the girl everyone said was low maintenance. I'd laugh when my friends complained about their boyfriends forgetting anniversaries because Daniel and I didn't really do anniversaries. We'd grab pizza, watch something on Netflix, go to bed. Easy, simple, no pressure. When my coworker Emma would vent about her boyfriend not planning nice dates, I'd feel this quiet superiority, like I'd figured out the secret to relationships that other women missed. Don't expect anything, and you'll never be disappointed. Daniel loved that about me. He told me all the time. You're so different from other girls, he'd say, and I'd feel this warm glow in my chest, like I'd won some invisible competition. His ex-girlfriend had been what he called exhausting, always wanting to talk about feelings, always planning elaborate date nights, always needing reassurance. With you I can just breathe, he told me on our 4th date, and I remember thinking, yes. This is who I want to be, the girl who makes everything easy. For 2 years it was fine, better than fine actually. We had fun together. We liked the same shows, the same restaurants, the same lazy Sunday routine of bagels and crossword puzzles. My friends said we were perfect together. His friends said the same, we fit. But somewhere around year 2, something started shifting in me, and I couldn't quite name what it was. I'd see Emma's boyfriend surprise her with concert tickets to her favorite band, and instead of feeling superior, I'd feel this weird hollowness. Or I'd scroll through Instagram and see couples at nice restaurants, and I'd wonder when the last time Daniel and I had gone somewhere that required a reservation. When had we last dressed up for each other? When had he last planned anything that wasn't just the default pizza and Netflix routine? I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself I was turning into exactly the kind of woman I'd always rolled my eyes at. I told myself that expecting grand gestures was shallow and immature, that real love was about comfort and compatibility, not performative romance. I didn't tell Daniel any of this. How could I? I'd spent 2 years building my entire identity in our relationship around being the cool, easygoing girlfriend. I couldn't suddenly start demanding more without admitting that I'd been faking it the whole time, or worse, that I'd changed into someone needy and difficult. Just when I thought I had the weird feelings under control, my sister got engaged. And that's when everything started unraveling, though I didn't see it at the time. I thought I was handling it fine. I congratulated her, helped her look at venues, listened to her agonize over invitation designs. But underneath all of that, I was doing the mental math. I'd been avoiding Daniel, and I had been together for 2.5 years at that point. We lived together. We'd talked vaguely about the future in that abstract way people do, but he'd never actually said when he might propose, or even if. And I'd never asked because asking would make me the kind of woman who pressured men into commitment, and I wasn't that person. Except apparently I was becoming that person, because suddenly I couldn't stop noticing which of our couple friends were getting engaged, getting married, moving forward. We were just staying the same. Comfortably, perfectly, maddeningly the same. Do you ever think about getting married? I asked Daniel one night, trying to sound casual. We were in our standard positions on the couch, him on his phone, me pretending to read. Sure, he said, not looking up. Eventually. When's eventually? He finally looked at me and I saw something flash across his face. Wariness, maybe. I don't know, babe, why? Are you in a rush because of your sister? The way he said it, like I was being predictable, like I was falling into some stereotype, made me backtrack immediately. No, of course not, I was just curious. Because you know I love you, right? I don't need a piece of paper to prove that. I know, I said, and I dropped it. Because what else could I do without confirming that I was, in fact, exactly the kind of woman who got weird about marriage because her younger sister got engaged first. But I started noticing other things after that. How Daniel never planned dates anymore. I was always the one to suggest restaurants, to buy movie tickets, to organize our weekends. How he'd sometimes browse his phone while I was talking to him about my day. How we'd gone from having sex 3 or 4 times a week to maybe once a week, and I was always the one initiating. I thought I was fixing things when I started initiating more conversations, more dates, more sex. Really, I was just trying harder and harder to recreate the feeling we used to have, the easy connection that had come naturally in the beginning. But trying to manufacture spontaneity is like trying to force yourself to fall asleep. The harder you try, the more elusive it becomes. You seem stressed lately, Daniel said one Saturday morning. Is everything okay? I wanted to say I feel like I'm doing all the emotional labor in this relationship. I wanted to say when's the last time you planned a date for us? I wanted to say I need you to try harder, to want me more, to act like you still care about making me happy. Instead, I said, I'm fine, just work stuff. Because I was still trying to be the cool girlfriend, still trying to be low maintenance, still trying to be the woman he'd fallen in love with, even though that woman was starting to feel like a costume that didn't fit anymore. The real shift happened at my sister's engagement party. Everyone kept asking us when we were going to tie the knot, and Daniel would laugh and say, we're taking our time, and I'd smile and nod like we'd discussed this, like we were on the same page. But we weren't. I wanted to be on a timeline towards something. He wanted to stay exactly where we were indefinitely. My aunt pulled me aside in the kitchen. For years we waited for Jack to propose, she said, unprompted. For years I told myself he just needed more time. You know what he needed. He needed me to stop waiting and start demanding. Some men won't step up until you make them. I laughed it off, but her words stuck with me, made something crystallize in my brain that had been forming for months. Maybe Daniel was comfortable because I'd made everything too comfortable. Maybe if I wanted more, I needed to ask for it, no, demand it. Why should I keep pretending to be satisfied with less than I wanted? That night, after we got home, I tried to talk to him about it. Everyone asking about marriage today was kind of a lot, I started. Yeah, sorry about that. Families are annoying. He was already pulling off his tie, clearly ready to decompress and put the party behind him. It made me think, though, we've been together almost 3 years. We live together. Where do you see this going? He sat down on the edge of our bed. I see it going great. What do you mean? I mean long-term, marriage, kids, maybe, a plan. We have time for all that, he said. Why are you suddenly worried about timelines? I'm not suddenly worried. I'm 28, Daniel, you're 31. When is the right time to think about this stuff? He sighed, and I could see him retreating into himself. Can we not do this tonight? I'm exhausted. When can we do it? I don't know. Later, when you're not all worked up from your sister's party. That's when I should have recognized what was happening. He was dismissing my concerns as situational, temporary, emotional. He wasn't actually hearing me, but I didn't push. I let it drop because pushing would make me the nagging girlfriend, and I still couldn't quite let go of being the cool one. I tried a different approach. I started dropping hints about couple friends who were getting engaged, about nice restaurants we should try, about weekend trips we could take. I thought if I could reignite the romance, remind him why we were great together, he'd naturally want to move forward. Instead, he seemed to pull back further. The more I reached, the more he retreated. It was like trying to grab smoke. Emma noticed during our coffee date 3 weeks later. You seem off. Is everything okay with Daniel? I wanted to maintain the facade, to keep pretending we were perfect, but something in me cracked. Honestly, I don't know anymore. I feel like I'm the only one trying. He never plans anything. He never brings up the future. I'm starting to feel like I'm more invested in this relationship than he is. Have you told him that? I've tried. He just shuts down or says we have plenty of time. What do you want to happen? That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I wanted him to want to marry me. I wanted him to pursue me the way he had in the beginning. I wanted to feel special instead of convenient. I wanted proof that I mattered enough for him to put in effort. I want him to try, I said finally. I want to feel like a priority instead of an afterthought. Then you need to tell him exactly that, and if he doesn't step up, Emma shrugged. Maybe he's showing you who he is. But he loved me. I knew he loved me, he just needed a wake-up call. He'd gotten too comfortable, that's all. If I could make him see that he was on the verge of losing me, he'd snap out of it. He'd remember why we were good together. He'd start trying again. Everyone online thought I was fine, but privately I was obsessing. I started reading articles about how to get your boyfriend to propose, how to revive a stagnant relationship, how to make a man chase you again. Every article said essentially the same thing: you've made yourself too available. You need to create some distance, some mystery. You need to make him realize he could lose you. So I started pulling back, not answering his texts immediately. Making plans with friends on nights we'd usually spend together, being less available for sex. I thought I was being strategic. I thought I was finally taking control of the situation instead of just hoping things would magically improve. Daniel noticed. You've been distant lately, he said one Thursday evening. Is something wrong? This was my opening. This was the moment to tell him everything I'd been feeling. But I was still so afraid of seeming needy, of being the girlfriend who complained and demanded and pressured. So instead I said, I've just been busy with work. Okay, he said slowly. But we're good, right? We're fine, I lied. We weren't fine. I was building resentment like a wall between us, brick by brick. Every night he came home and zoned out on his phone instead of asking about my day was another brick. Every weekend where I planned everything and he just went along passively was another brick. Every time we had sex that felt more routine than passionate was another brick. I thought I was waiting for the right moment to address it all. Really, I was just getting angrier and more convinced that he should already know what was wrong, that I shouldn't have to spell it out for him. My breaking point came on our 3-year anniversary. I'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting to do something special. In my fantasy version, he'd surprise me with a nice restaurant reservation, maybe a weekend trip, something that showed he'd been paying attention, that he still wanted to romance me. He came home that night with takeout from our regular Thai place. Happy anniversary, he said, kissing my cheek. I got your usual. I stared at the plastic containers. This is it, takeout? He looked confused. You love this place. I thought we could watch that documentary you mentioned. Daniel, it's our 3-year anniversary. I know, and we're celebrating together, isn't that what matters? Something inside me snapped. 3 years of swallowing my disappointment, of pretending to be satisfied with the bare minimum, of convincing myself that wanting more made me high maintenance. 3 years of watching him put in less and less effort while I contorted myself into the cool girlfriend who never complained. I can't do this anymore, I said. Do what? I thought you liked staying in. I did, but Daniel, I also like feeling like you give a shit. When's the last time you planned a real date? When's the last time you surprised me with anything? When's the last time you made me feel like I'm more than just your comfortable default option? He set down the takeout, his face hardening. Where is this coming from? You've never cared about this stuff before. That's because I was pretending not to care. Because I thought being the cool, low-maintenance girlfriend was what you needed. But I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from being the only one who puts in effort, the only one who thinks about our future, the only one who's trying. That's not fair. I work hard, I provide, I'm here. Being here isn't enough. I need you to actually show up emotionally. I need you to plan things, to pursue me, to make me feel wanted instead of just convenient. So what do you want from me? A script, a manual on how to be romantic enough for you? That's when I said it. The ultimatum that would change everything, the words I can't take back no matter how many times I've replayed this conversation in my head. I want you to provide better or I'll find someone who will. The room went completely silent. I could see him processing what I just said, his expression shifting from defensive to something I couldn't quite read. Hurt maybe, or anger, or both. Provide better, he repeated. Like I'm some kind of service you're rating. That's not what I meant. No, I think it's exactly what you meant. You want me to perform better, to meet some standard you've apparently had this whole time but never mentioned. And if I don't, you'll just find someone else who will. I'm just asking you to try harder, to care more. To be someone I'm not, he finished. You know what's funny? I thought you loved me for who I am. I thought we were on the same page about what mattered. But apparently, you've been keeping score this whole time, and I've been failing without knowing there was even a test. It's not a test, Daniel, it's just, I need more. Then you should find someone who can give you more, because I can't be someone I'm not just to keep you from going elsewhere. I expected him to be upset. I expected a fight, maybe some tears, followed by him promising to do better. That's what was supposed to happen when you finally stood up for yourself. The other person was supposed to realize what they were about to lose and fight for you. He didn't fight. He went to our bedroom and started packing a bag, just like that. No arguing, no begging, no promising to change, just quiet, methodical packing. What are you doing? I followed him, panic rising in my throat. I'm going to stay at Mike's for a few days. Give us both some space to think. Space to think? Daniel, I didn't say I wanted to break up. I just want you to try harder. He paused with a shirt in his hands, finally looking directly at me. You gave me an ultimatum, and you know what? You're right. You should find someone who wants to provide what you need, because I thought what we had was enough, but clearly it's not, and I'm not going to audition to keep my own girlfriend. You're being ridiculous. I'm just asking you to put in effort. No, you're asking me to prove I'm worth staying with, and I'm not going to do that. Either I'm enough or I'm not. You've made it pretty clear which one you think. He finished packing and walked past me, overnight bag over his shoulder. I stood frozen in the hallway, still not quite believing this was happening. He was supposed to be shocked into action, not walking out. Daniel, wait, he stopped at the door. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. But it's not going to be me turning into someone else to meet standards I didn't know I was supposed to be meeting. Then he left. I stood in our apartment, surrounded by the containers of Thai food that were supposed to be our anniversary dinner, and I couldn't quite process what had just happened. I'd wanted him to realize he was losing me. I'd wanted him to fight for me, to promise to be better, to show me I mattered enough to change for. Instead, he'd called my bluff and walked away. I texted him that night, can we talk about this? No response. The next morning, I think we both said things we didn't mean. Let's figure this out. Nothing. By day 3 I was calling. His phone went straight to voicemail. Emma came over that weekend and found me still in my pajamas, scrolling through 3 years of photos on my phone. He's being a child, I told her. All I did was ask for basic effort, and he made it into this big dramatic thing. Did you really say you'd find someone else if he didn't provide better? I mean, yes, but he knows I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to make him understand how serious I was. About leaving, about needing more from him. Emma sat down next to me. Babe, I love you, but that's a pretty intense thing to say if you didn't mean it. I just wanted him to wake up, to realize he was taking me for granted. And he did wake up, just not in the way you expected. That's when the first crack in my certainty appeared. I'd been so focused on my own needs, my own dissatisfaction, my own narrative of being underappreciated. But from Daniel's perspective, his girlfriend of 3 years had suddenly started acting distant, then blindsided him with complaints he'd never heard before, then threatened to leave him if he didn't become someone different. No, that wasn't fair. I had tried to bring it up before. He dismissed me. He'd shut down the conversation. This was on him for not listening. Except. Had I really been clear? Or had I been dropping hints and expecting him to read my mind? Had I explicitly said, I need you to plan dates, or had I just mentioned other couples' dates and hoped he'd get the message? Had I told him I'm worried about our future, or had I asked vague questions about marriage and accepted his vague answers? I didn't want to think about this too hard because it meant admitting I might have handled this wrong. And I couldn't have handled it wrong because I'd spent months reading articles and getting advice and finally building up the courage to advocate for my needs. This was supposed to be me finally standing up for myself. This was supposed to be my moment of taking control. Daniel came by the following week to get more of his stuff. He was polite but distant, like I was a roommate he barely knew instead of the woman he'd been with for 3 years. Are we really doing this? I asked. Are we really breaking up over one fight? It's not one fight, it's you fundamentally not being happy with who I am. And I get it, I could plan better dates, I could be more romantic, I could think about the future more, but the way you said it, like I'm some employee who's not meeting performance standards. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly being evaluated and found wanting. That's not what I meant. Maybe not, but it's how it felt. And honestly, I've been thinking about what you said, about finding someone who will provide what you need, and you should. You should find someone who naturally wants to do all the things you want, instead of trying to change me into that person. I don't want someone else, I want you. You want a version of me that doesn't exist, and I think I've been wanting a version of you that doesn't exist either. The woman I fell in love with didn't care about grand gestures or elaborate dates. She was happy with pizza and Netflix, but that's not who you are anymore, and that's okay. People change. We just changed into people who want different things. I watched him pack boxes of his books, his clothes, the little pieces of his life that had gotten tangled up with mine over 3 years. I wanted to argue, to convince him he was wrong, that we could fix this, but part of me was starting to wonder if he was right. Had I changed? Or had I been faking who I was from the beginning and only now was my real self emerging? I'm sorry, I said finally. I'm sorry for the way I said it, but I'm not sorry for wanting more from this relationship. I know, he said, and I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed, I really am. He left with 3 boxes and suddenly our apartment had gaps where his stuff used to be, empty spaces on the bookshelf, empty drawers, empty hangers in the closet. I thought I'd feel relieved, like I'd finally escaped a relationship that wasn't serving me. Instead, I felt hollowed out, but I told myself that was normal. Breakups were hard even when they were the right decision. I'd grieve and move on and eventually find someone who wanted what I wanted. My friends rallied around me, took me out for drinks, let me vent about Daniel's emotional unavailability, agreed that I deserved better. I told them the story the way I'd framed it in my head. I'd asked for basic effort and he'd refused, so I'd stood up for myself and ended things. They were proud of me for knowing my worth. I posted on social media like everything was fine. Pictures of brunches with friends, of solo trips I took to prove I was thriving. I got likes, supportive comments, DMs from acquaintances saying they admired my strength. Everyone online thought I was handling the breakup like a boss, but privately I was checking Daniel's Instagram every few hours to see if he was posting anything, if he seemed sad, if he was already seeing someone new. He wasn't posting much, just occasional pictures of hiking with Mike or at a concert with friends. He looked fine. He looked more than fine, actually. He looked lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. That's when the second crack appeared. He wasn't falling apart without me. He wasn't posting sad songs or cryptic quotes about heartbreak. He was just living his life, moving on, like our 3 years together had been nice but ultimately not essential to his happiness. Meanwhile, I was obsessing, replaying every conversation, every fight, every moment I'd felt disappointed, trying to pinpoint exactly when things had gone wrong, trying to figure out if there was a moment I could have handled differently that would have led to a different outcome. "You're better off," Emma told me over our weekly coffee. "You said it yourself, you were doing all the emotional labor. He was taking you for granted." Right, I agreed. But was he? Or had I decided he was taking me for granted because he wasn't naturally doing the things I'd decided were important? Was there a difference between someone taking you for granted and someone just being who they've always been while you secretly want them to be different? I didn't say this to Emma because saying it out loud would mean admitting I might have made a mistake. And I couldn't have made a mistake because I'd been advocating for my needs. And everyone knows you're supposed to advocate for your needs in relationships. Everyone knows you shouldn't settle for less than you deserve. But what if I'd been asking for more than was reasonable? What if I'd been expecting Daniel to intuit needs I'd never clearly communicated until I was already angry about him not meeting them? What if my ultimatum had been less about standing up for myself and more about punishing him for not reading my mind? I started second-guessing everything. Every piece of advice I'd followed, every article I'd read about making men chase you or creating distance to build attraction. What if all of that advice had just taught me how to sabotage a perfectly good relationship? What if the relationship hadn't been broken until I decided it was? 3 months after the breakup, my sister's wedding happened. I went alone, smiled through everyone's sympathetic looks, drank too much champagne, watched my little sister dance with her new husband and felt an ugly twist of envy that I hated myself for feeling. My aunt found me by the bar. "Where's Daniel? I thought you two would be next." "We broke up," I said, trying to sound casual. "Oh, honey, what happened?" I gave her the sanitized version. "We wanted different things. Grew apart, mutual decision." She nodded sympathetically and said all the right things about how I'd find someone better, someone who appreciated me. But all I could think was, "This is your fault. You were the one who told me to demand more, to make him step up. You were the one who planted the idea that Daniel needed an ultimatum. Except that wasn't fair either. My aunt hadn't forced me to do anything. I'd chosen to listen to her advice, chosen to believe that ultimatums worked, chosen to say the words that had ended my relationship. I couldn't blame her for my decisions. I saw Daniel one more time, 5 months post-breakup. We ran into each other at a coffee shop near our old apartment. He was with a woman I didn't recognize. They were laughing about something, and she touched his arm the way you touch someone you're comfortable with, someone who's yours. He saw me and his smile faltered for just a second before recovering. "Hey, how are you?" "Good, really good." I tried to mean it. "Good, that's good." He paused, then gestured to the woman next to him. "This is Sarah." Sarah smiled and extended her hand. She was pretty in an understated way, wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She looked like the kind of woman who'd be perfectly happy with pizza and Netflix. They left a few minutes later, and I sat with my coffee getting cold in front of me, watching them through the window. They walked down the street hand in hand, Daniel leaning in to say something that made her laugh. He looked at her the way he used to look at me in the beginning, before I'd decided that wasn't enough. That's when I understood the thing I'd been avoiding for months. Daniel hadn't refused to try harder. He'd refused to turn himself into someone else to meet standards I'd never communicated until I was already resentful. And the worst part, the part I couldn't admit to anyone, I'd given him that ultimatum not because I genuinely thought we were wrong for each other, but because I'd wanted to win. I'd wanted him to prove I was worth fighting for. I'd wanted him to choose me over his own sense of self. And when he'd chosen himself instead, I'd framed it as him not caring enough. But really, he'd cared about himself enough not to stay in a relationship where he was being graded on metrics he'd never agreed to. Here's what I've never told anyone: I didn't want Daniel to provide better. I wanted him to provide differently. I wanted him to perform love in ways that looked good on Instagram, that made me feel special compared to other women, that proved I was worth grand gestures. I turned our relationship into a competition I'd never told him we were having, then got angry when he wasn't winning. I check his Instagram less now, but I still do it. I see pictures of him and Sarah at farmers markets, hiking trails, casual dinners. Nothing fancy, nothing Instagram-worthy, just two people who seem genuinely content with ordinary happiness. The kind of happiness I used to have before I convinced myself it wasn't enough. My therapist asks what I learned from the relationship. I give her the approved answers: the importance of communication, the need to express your needs clearly, the value of advocating for yourself. And all of that is true, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I learned how easy it is to destroy something good while convincing yourself you're fighting for something better. I learned that ultimatums only work if you're actually prepared for the other person to walk away, and that sometimes when they walk away, it's not because they didn't love you enough. It's because they loved themselves enough not to stay somewhere they weren't truly wanted for who they were. I learned that all the articles about making men chase you and maintaining mystery and never being too available were teaching me how to manipulate instead of how to communicate. I learned that I'd spent 3 years being someone I wasn't, then blamed Daniel for not knowing who I really was. I learned that sometimes the person you need to provide better is yourself. I'm dating again now, making the same mistakes with new people probably, still reading articles about relationships and trying to find the formula that will guarantee happiness. Still afraid that wanting more makes me high maintenance, but also afraid that wanting less means settling. Last week, a guy I've been seeing for a month asked what I was looking for in a relationship. I started to give him the answer I thought he wanted: easy, casual, no pressure, and stopped myself. Honestly, I don't really know anymore, I told him. I thought I knew, but I got it pretty wrong before, he laughed. At least you're honest about it. That's the thing though, I'm not sure I am honest about it. I'm not sure I know how to be honest about what I want because I spent so long performing who I thought I should be. First the cool girlfriend who didn't need anything, then the empowered woman who demanded everything. Neither of those people was really me. I don't know if I'll ever stop wondering what would have happened if I just talked to Daniel, really talked to him, instead of dropping hints and building resentment, and finally exploding with an ultimatum. Maybe we still would have broken up. Maybe we wanted fundamentally different things, and no amount of communication could have bridged that gap, or maybe we could have figured it out. Maybe if I'd said, I'm starting to want different things from our relationship, and I'm scared to tell you because I don't want to seem needy, instead of provide better or I'll leave, we could have had a real conversation about what we both needed. Maybe he would have stepped up. Maybe I would have relaxed. Maybe we would have found some middle ground between his comfortable routine and my need for romance. I'll never know. And that's the part that keeps me up at night, scrolling through his Instagram at 2 in the morning, looking at pictures of a life he's building without me. Not because I want him back, I'm not sure I even do anymore, but because I need to understand how I turned into someone who would destroy her own relationship while thinking she was saving it. Everyone still thinks Daniel's the villain. My friends, my family, even my therapist sometimes. They think he was too comfortable, too complacent, too unwilling to fight for us. And maybe they're right. Maybe he could have tried harder, communicated better, seen what I needed before I had to explode about it. But I know something they don't know. Something I've never admitted out loud because admitting it means accepting that I'm not the wronged party in this story. I'm not the woman who finally stood up for herself and left a man who didn't appreciate her. I'm the woman who had something good and convinced herself it wasn't good enough. Who spent months planning how to make her boyfriend chase her, instead of just telling him she felt taken for granted. Who gave an ultimatum not because she genuinely thought they should break up, but because she thought it would scare him into becoming someone different. I'm the woman who said, provide better or I'll find someone who will, and was genuinely shocked when he did neither and left. And the absolute worst part, the part that makes me the villain of my own story. Some sick, broken part of me is still waiting for him to come back. Still checking my phone, hopping for a text. Hopping he'll say he's been thinking about us. Hopping he'll say Sarah's nice but she's not me. But why would he come back? I told him he wasn't enough. I told him I'd replace him if he didn't perform better. I treated him like a service provider instead of a partner. And when he had the self-respect to leave instead of auditioning to keep me, I framed it as him not caring enough to fight. I did this. I destroyed us. And I convinced everyone, including myself, that I was the victim. That's the confession I've been avoiding. That's the truth underneath all my justifications about advocating for my needs and knowing my worth. I didn't know my worth. I knew my insecurities. And I made Daniel pay for them until he finally refused to pay anymore. 9 months later, I still don't have better. I don't have different. I have the same apartment with gaps where his things used to be, and an Instagram feed full of carefully curated pictures that suggest I'm thriving, and a heart that knows the truth I gave away something real for something I thought looked better from the outside. I said provide better or I'll find someone who will. He did neither and left.